All right, we are on the Divided Kingdom 17, part 17. We finished with Hezekiah last week, and he was a good king, the best they had. However, he didn't end good. He ended bad. He showed off all the goodies to the world, and he got the warning, hey, they're going to come in and they're going to take everything. You just showed them everything you had. You think they're going to be content with you having it? No, sir, they're going to come get it. So that's a foreshadowing of Israel going into captivity. Now we have his son that's going to reign, Manasseh. Manasseh reigns 55 years. Sounds like a long time, but that's because he was a baby when it starts. He reigns as a regent. He has other people running the kingdom and training him from 697 to 686 BC, and then he reigns solo from 686 to 643 BC. That's what the scholars tell us, and whatever. We just go with what the Bible says. 2 Kings chapter 21, verse 1. 2 Kings 21, verse 1. Manasseh was 12 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 55 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Hepzibah. Don't name your kid that. Hepzibah. Hepzibah, get in here, it's dinner time. I guess that she didn't plan on saying that name very often. And it says the same thing in 2 Chronicles 33:1, no new information there. Right off the bat, he does evil. He doesn't even give us a warm-up session of doing right. Now, he was around for the tail end of his dad doing wicked. So we got to assume that some of that is hereditary. Some of it's what he learned by watching and seeing. However, that never excuses anybody. Everybody individually stands before God, and God judges that individual regardless of what environment you were from. In 2 Kings 21, verse 2, he does evil, and he ends up rebuilding the high places. That was wicked. Sets up the altars to Baal, and he pollutes the temple. All the hot buttons that you can make God mad with, those are the ones he's pushing. 2 Kings 21, verse 2. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, after the abomination of the heathen, whom the Lord had cast out before the children of Israel. For he built up again the high places, which Hezekiah his father had destroyed. His dad had done something good. He got rid of the wicked stuff. And now, here his son comes right back along beside him and puts it right back in place. Which his father had destroyed. Where was I? Verse 3. And he raised up altars to Baal and made groves, as did Ahab, king of Israel. Oh, now we're comparing him to a northern king and the worst one of the lot. And worshipped all the host of heaven. Now that's important. So he's an astrologer, astronomer, whatever they call that stuff. He's a stargazer. Now, this is dumped into our age now. People are still doing the same thing. They go by a horoscope. That's what this guy's doing right here. He's following the stars. The host of heaven are giving him some kind of message. And served them, and built altars in the house of the Lord, of which the Lord said, in Jerusalem will I put my name. And he built altars for the host of heaven. It wasn't enough just to serve and to worship the host of heaven. He builds altars to them in the two courts of the house of the Lord. And he made his sons pass through the fire. That is, he burned them. And observed times. That's that astrology thing, looking at the stars and doing his monthly horoscope. And used enchantments, witchcraft, and dealt with familiar spirits and wizards. So Harry Pothead's in that verse too, wizards. He wrought much wickedness in the sight of the Lord to provoke him to anger. God says, I see it as though he's intentionally trying to make me mad. And he set a graven image of the grove and he had made in the house, of which the Lord said to David and Solomon his son, in this house and in Jerusalem, which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel, will I put my name forever. So what he does is he does something the Antichrist is going to do. He puts an image in the temple. The place that is supposed to be dedicated to the Lord becomes dedicated to flesh, to humanity, or to some other god. Verse 8. Neither will I make the feet of Israel move any more out of the land which I gave their fathers, only if they will observe to do according to all that I have commanded them, according to all the law of my servant Moses commanded them. Okay, so he's reminding us here, look, I gave them this land, but they don't have to stay there. If they'll just do what I say, it's theirs to keep. However, it's on loan. It's God's property. God's letting them squat there. And Israel's the only designated squatter. Nobody else can come squat there. However, even Israel is not safe. If they won't obey, God will kick them off too. Verse 9. But they hearkened not, and Manasseh seduced them to do more evil than did the nations whom the Lord destroyed before the children of Israel. Now, many Christians go down that same path. You'll find many Christians can be more wicked than the world. They can. For some reason, the devil will give them more opportunities than he gives his own children, because he feels like he gets some kind of brownie point from that. So if you want to do wicked, don't be surprised if you end up being the leader of wickedness as a Christian over the lost world. The same thing happens in 2 Chronicles 33, 2-9 says the same thing pretty much. And let's see if there's any new info I wanted to give you. Yeah, in verse 9 it says, So Manasseh made Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem to err and to do worse than the heathen. Okay, it's an error. But he seduced them. He's trying to make them do evil. It wasn't that he was doing it with a whole heart and he thought he was doing right and was just doing the wrong thing. He knew it was wrong. And he was seducing, he was trying to fool the public into doing something that was wrong. Now, all the way through the Bible, God's against this. And he knew it. If he had studied his Bible at all, if he knew the law just a tiny bit, he would have known that he was on dangerous ground. Leviticus 18, verse 25, it says this, And the land is defiled, therefore I do visit the iniquities thereof upon it, and the land itself vomiteth out the inhabitants. This is God justifying giving Israel the plot of land to the Jews. Verse 26, Ye shall therefore keep my statutes and my judgments, and shall not commit any of these abominations, neither any of your own nations, nor any stranger that sojourneth among you. For all these abominations have the men of the land done, which were before you, and the land is defiled. Okay? So they did this stuff, and it goes into the ground, and the ground talks to God. You found that real quick. You find that with Cain and Abel. God says, I hear the voice of your brother's blood crying from the ground to me. So that ground talks. When you do wicked, the ground says, wickedness was done right here. God hears it. He says, all of these nations that were before you had to kick out. Because not only do I know that they're doing wicked, but that ground is yelling at me, hey, they're doing wicked here. And so God visits for it. In verse 28, that the land spew not you out also when ye defile it, as it spewed out the nations that were before you. For whosoever shall commit any of these abominations, even the souls that commit them shall be cut off from among their people. God says, I don't care if you're a Jew or you're a Gentile. Anybody who commits these abominations gets my attention, and not in the way you want to get it. So that's what Manasseh has done. He's gotten God's attention for all the wrong reasons. Okay, the next thing we see is the prophets of the land foretell the captivity of Judah and destruction of Jerusalem because of the abominations of Manasseh. Okay, you're going to do abominations? Guess what? You know what's coming. But God always does this. He sends a messenger. He sends a voice to say, stop it. God is not like man.
Amen.
If I was running the show, I would have maybe written a Bible, written a law, the book. Here's what I require of you. And then when you broke it, I wouldn't warn you. I would smack you. Because it's written right there. I mean, he did all of the work to preserve from heaven what is important to him and put it in language we understand. Now, that's supernatural right there. Why does he have to argue with us about us doing it? I mean, but he does. In 2 Kings 21 verse 10. 2 Kings 21:10. And the Lord spake by his servants, the prophets. Okay, God considers the prophets here to be his servants. And you'll see this phrase used all the way through the Bible. And the prophets are not, when you see a prophet come to town, you start ducking. You suddenly remember you've got some important meeting scheduled in the next town over. Because it was not usually a happy time. But they're messengers of God. The prophet saying, because Manasseh, king of Judah, hath done these abominations, and hath done wickedly above all the Amorites, above all that the Amorites did, which were before him, and hath made Judah also to sin with his idols. Therefore thus saith the Lord God of Israel, behold, I am bringing such evil upon Jerusalem and Judah, that whosoever heareth of it, both his ears shall tingle. God ain't happy. Verse 13. And I will stretch over Jerusalem the line of Samaria, and the plummet of the house of Ahab, and I will wipe Jerusalem as a man wipeth a dish, wiping it and turning it upside down. Now that's a thing. It doesn't work for me. They claim that a man washes a dish differently than a woman, and according to the verse, I guess it is. They say that most women will wash a dish and dry it like this. It's been washed, now they're going to dry it like this and dry it like this. But a man does it differently. A man will dry it like this and turn it over and dry it like that. And that's what that verse is saying. Just the same way that a man would flip that dish and wipe it, that's the way God's going to do Israel. He's going to wipe them out twice. And we've already seen the northern go in. And now the southern, the flip side of it's about to go. Verse 14. And I will forsake the remnant of mine inheritance, and deliver them unto the hands of their enemies. And they shall become a prey and a spoil to all their enemies. Because, here's why. Because they have done that which was evil in my sight, and have provoked me to anger, since the day their fathers came forth out of Egypt, even unto this day. Now that tells you something about the nation. They had been doing wicked from the time they left Egypt. They weren't doing right in the wilderness. There's always a clique. You could go to the best church, you could go to the best school, the best whatever. And there's always one clique that's more carnal than the others. That's Israel, this nation that had seen God's miraculous power. There's still a clique within it that wants to be wicked. So God's saying, I'm viewing you now the same way as I viewed the wickedness that's run all the way through this thing from age to age. 2 Chronicles 33:10 sums it all up in one verse this way. And the Lord spake to Manasseh and to his people, but they would not hearken. That shortened it up quite a bit, didn't it? But that tells you exactly what's happening. God spoke to those people. Not only to the king, but to the people themselves. And not only did the people ignore him, the king ignored God as well. So, because of that, they need a wake-up call. The alarm is about to sound, and there's not going to be a snooze button. In 2 Chronicles chapter 36, verse 15. 2 Chronicles 36:15. And the Lord God of their fathers sent to them by messengers, that's the prophets, rising up betimes and sending, because he hath compassion on his people and on his dwelling place. So God didn't just warn them once or twice. It says many times, betimes. So many times he tried to warn them and tried to get their attention. But the conclusion is they wouldn't hearken. In Nehemiah 9:26, He says this, nevertheless, Nehemiah is recounting their history. Nevertheless, they were disobedient and rebelled against thee, and cast thy law behind their backs, and slew thy prophets, which testified against them, to turn them to thee. And they wrought great provocations. Okay, so Nehemiah is retelling the same thing. God, you did send messengers to them. You sent them a witness. And the purpose of the witness was not to just expose sin, but to turn them. You know, it does no good to expose sin if you don't have an answer for it. That's not God's point. God's point is not to show how wicked you are. It's to show you can do something about it. In Matthew 23, here's Jesus' words on it. Matthew 23, verse 34. Wherefore, behold, I send you unto... I got to read that again. Wherefore, behold, I send unto you prophets, plural, and wise men, and scribes, and some of them ye shall kill and crucify, and some of them shall ye scourge in your synagogues, and persecute them from city to city. It's always been the same. When somebody shows up with a message from God, the natural inclination is to reject God's message, and suddenly we've got to punish the person because they're connected with it. If we can kill that person, it'll eliminate the message, but it doesn't. God will raise somebody else up. Verse 35, that upon you may come all the righteous blood shed from the earth, from the blood of righteous Abel unto the blood of Zacharias, son of Barachias, whom ye slew between the temple and the altar. Verily I say unto you, all these things shall come upon this generation. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets, and stonest them which are sent unto thee, how often would I have gathered thy children together, even as a hen gathered her chicks under her wings, and you would not. That's exactly what's going on here. God sent messengers to them. They wouldn't listen to them. And we're about to see what they do to them. They kill them. That's what they do. So no wonder God's really mad at this guy, Manasseh. Not only will he not listen to him, not only will he not listen to the prophets he sends, but he's about to start killing. Manasseh sheds much innocent blood. 2 Kings 21:16. 2 Kings 21:16. Says, moreover, Manasseh shed innocent blood very much, till he had filled Jerusalem from one end to the other, beside his sins wherewith he made Judah to sin, in doing that which was evil in the sight of the Lord. So, you're starting to see him as a type of the Antichrist more and more. Now he's filling the city with blood. Why? Because God keeps sending messengers saying, clean up your act. Head toward God. What you're doing is wicked. God punishes for that. Well, God punishes, I'm going to punish you. And they do. They kill him left and right. In 2 Kings 24. 2 Kings 24, verse 3 to 4. 2 Kings 24, 3 to 4. Surely at the commandment of the Lord came this upon Judah, to remove them out of his sight for the sins of Manasseh, according to all that he did. Okay, because of his evil acts, God says, I've got to cleanse that land. The way to do it is kill the person responsible. Verse 4. And also for the innocent blood that he shed. Okay, God's taking note of blood. We know from Cain and Abel that blood talks. It speaks to God and God listens to it. And when innocent blood is shed, God's perking his ears up to see what it's saying. Now, in the Old Testament, if it was a lamb, that innocent blood was saying, cover so-and-so. And so that blood stood for something. When innocent blood is shed here, it says innocent blood needs a reason to have been shed. So God balances it out. He goes and kills the person who did it. For he filled Jerusalem with innocent blood, which the Lord would not pardon. God doesn't forgive that. In Numbers 35:33 says this, So ye shall not pollute the land wherein ye are. For blood it defileth the land, and the land cannot be cleansed of the blood that is shed therein, but by the blood of him that shed it. The only way to cleanse blood is to kill the person who shed innocent blood. That's why there's a death penalty. It goes all the way back to the Old Testament. If you killed somebody with intention and you did not have legal grounds for it, then it should be your blood that's shed. And God says that'll balance it out. That'll cleanse the land. In Jeremiah 2, verse 34, he says this, Also in thy skirts is found the blood of the souls of the poor innocents. America's got some explaining to do. All the abortions that have gone on in this country, there's some blood been shed by innocents. I have not found it by a secret search, but upon all these things. God says there, it didn't take any work for me to figure this out. The blood's been yelling. It's been saying innocent blood. In Jeremiah 7, verse 6, he says, If ye oppress not the stranger, the fatherless, the widow, shed not innocent blood in this place, neither walk after other gods to your hurt. God's given them a list of things to stay away from. In the list is don't shed innocent blood, because that's going to result in me coming down and hurting you. That's the way he put it, to your own hurt. In Jeremiah 15, verse 4, he says, And I will cause them to be removed into all kingdoms of the earth. And that's exactly what's going to happen. Judah will become tributary. They're going to be taken over by Babylon. They're removed into all kingdoms of the earth because of Manasseh, the son of Hezekiah, king of Judah, for that which he did in Jerusalem. What did he do in Jerusalem? Shed innocent blood. God points his finger right back to that reason right there, shedding innocent blood. In Jeremiah 19:4, he says, you'll see that Jeremiah ties into this. I don't normally give you a bunch of cross references, but there's a bunch on this one. Jeremiah 19:4. Because they have forsaken me and have estranged this place, that's the temple, and have burned incense in it to other gods, whom neither they nor their fathers have known, nor the kings of Judah, and have filled this place with the blood of innocents. It's all tied right back to that blood, blood, blood. In Matthew 23:30, he says, and say, this is the people, God is telling them what they're thinking. He said, I know what you're thinking, here's what you're going to try to say. And say, if we had been in the days of our fathers, we would not have been partaker with them in the blood of the prophets. They would say, oh, we're innocent. Yeah, our ancestor did that, but if we had been back there, we wouldn't have been part of that. He says, wherefore, ye be witnesses unto yourselves, that ye are the children of them which killed the prophets. You're rejecting the message, so if you had the opportunity, you'd be killing them too. And if a person won't accept the message of God, they're witnessing against themselves. If everything was equal and they could get away with it, to shut you up, they would kill you. That's what he's saying there. The Assyrians bind Manasseh and carry him to Babylon. His wickedness has caught up with him. Now he does something good here. He repents. It worked. God put almost everything on him that he could handle. He didn't kill him, but he came real close to it. He repents, and the Lord delivers him, and he returns to Jerusalem. We'll see this process. 2 Chronicles 33, verse 11. 2 Chronicles 33, verse 11. Now this is great news for us, because it says no matter how wicked and far down you've fallen, you can repent, and God will take you back. I don't know why, but he does. This man right here, if I was God, I would have wiped him out a long time ago. God allows him to repent, and then God restores him. Even after all the wickedness he's done and all the people he's influenced for wickedness, God still has mercy. 2 Chronicles 33:11. Wherefore the Lord brought upon them the captains of the host of the king of Assyria, which took Manasseh among the thorns and bound him with fetters, and carried him to Babylon. And when he was afflicted, he besought the Lord his God, and humbled himself greatly before the Lord of his fathers, and prayed unto him, and was entreated of him, and he heard his supplication, and brought him again to Jerusalem into his kingdom. Then Manasseh knew the Lord, he was God. Okay, he did the right thing. He got over there, and he was in captivity, and now pain had spoken to him. While he wouldn't listen to the messengers of God and the prophets he could kill, and all this stuff he could do, when he's no longer the one in charge and somebody else is holding the sword, he turns to God. And it's a good thing he did. God heard him, and he did something about it. There in verse 12 it says, and when he was in affliction makes us talk to God. Usually that'll make us talk. A lot of times it's something we can handle on our own. We'll say, okay, God, next time around, I got this one. And we'll take care of it. But affliction, when there's nothing you can do, that'll make you get one-on-one with God real quick. And it did for this man. In Leviticus 26, verse 39, God's predicting Israel's demise way, way early. He says, look, if you're not going to do these things that I tell you to do, here's what's going to happen to you. You're going to be sent into captivity. But even when you get sent into captivity, I'm giving you an out. And that's what Manasseh took. Let's see it in the Bible. Leviticus 26, verse 39. And they that are left of you shall pine away in their iniquity in your enemy's land, and also in the iniquities of their fathers shall they pine away with them. If they shall confess their iniquity, and the iniquity of their fathers with their trespass, which they have trespassed against me, and that they also have walked contrary to me, and that I also have walked contrary unto them, and have brought them into the land of their enemies, if then their uncircumcised hearts be humbled, and they then accept of the punishment of their iniquity, then will I remember my covenant with Jacob, and also my covenant with Isaac, and my covenant with Abraham will I remember, and I will remember the land. God says, even if you've made me mad, and I kicked you out of the land, and you've got to go pay some dues, if you'll humble yourself and just admit to me what I already know you did. I mean, that's the reason he kicked them out to start with. It's because of what they did. They know they did it. We do the same thing. Like we're fooling God, like he doesn't know. He knows when you sin, and you know when you sinned. There's nobody you're fooling. Just tell him, hey, I did it again. I'm stupid. Okay, it doesn't hurt to admit it. So just admit it. And he says, if you'll do that, I'll do something spectacular. I'll remember the good times, and I'll bring you back to the land. And that's what he does. In Deuteronomy 4, verse 30, he says, when thou art in tribulation, and all these things are come upon thee, even in the latter days, if thou turn to the Lord thy God, and shalt be obedient unto his voice, for the Lord thy God is a merciful God. He will not forsake thee, neither destroy thee, nor forget the covenant of thy fathers, which he swore unto them. He says right there, all you have to do is turn to me. And I'll remember, I'm not going to forsake you, and I'm going to pick you right back up. Now, that passage right there is going to be very important in the tribulation. Now, you see the verses right there, or the words right there, when thou art in tribulation. Now, before they knew anything the rest of the Bible was written, that tribulation sure applied to Manasseh when he was in Babylon. That was tribulation. But there's a worse one coming. And some Jews will pick that up, and then they'll turn to God, and that'll be the remnant that gets saved. In Jeremiah 31, verse 18. Jeremiah 31, 18 to 20 says, I have surely heard Ephraim bemoaning himself thus. That's us. Moaning. Be moaning. What you be doing? I be moaning. I have surely heard Ephraim bemoaning himself. Thou hast chastened me, I was chastened. As a bullock unaccustomed to the yoke, turn thou me, and I shall be turned, for thou art the Lord my God. That's a good prayer. He says right there, look, I'm no good. I'm just like an animal down here. If you'll just point me in the right direction, then I'll head that way. Now that's humble. That's humility right there. The next verse. Surely after that I was turned. I repented, and after that I was instructed. I smote upon my thigh. I was so stupid. Why did I do that? I was ashamed, yea, even confounded, because I did bear the reproach of my youth. Is Ephraim my dear son? Is he a pleasant child? For since I spake against him, I do earnestly remember him still. That's God talking. He's saying, even though he's been an idiot, I still remember him. I still want to restore him. Therefore, my bowels are troubled for him. God says, oh, it's like you cringing for someone else who's not smart enough to do it themselves. Like you see a little toddler heading out into a crowd that's going to get run over, or you hear somebody talking and they should be embarrassed about what's coming out of their mouth, and they're not, and you get embarrassed for them. You kind of cringe for, That's what God's doing right here. He says, I'm troubled for him. I see the way he's heading. I will surely have mercy upon him, saith the Lord. Now, God is a good God. He's plenteous in mercy. That is, he's got plenty of it. So that indicates the amount of mercy we need is a certain degree, and he's got even more than that. Now, that's good. In Hosea 5, verse 15. Hosea 5, verse 15. I will go and return to my place. This is God talking. He says, look, okay, they're doing a bunch of crazy stuff down there, and none of it's the right thing. Tell you what, I'm just going to take a time out right here, see if they figure things out. Okay, here's Hosea 5:15. God says, I will go and return to my place till they acknowledge their offense and seek my face. In their affliction, they will seek me early. He says, okay, I'm gonna back off. They're just playing games right now. I'm through listening to all the nonsense. I'm gonna back off. I'm going back to my place. It's happy there. Good times up there. And I'm gonna wait. Now, when God's presence is removed, affliction comes in fast. He says, in their affliction, they'll seek me early. So the best thing for them is for God to remove his presence. And that's what they do. In Micah chapter 6, verse 9. Micah chapter 6, verse 9. He said, the Lord's voice crieth unto the city, and the man of wisdom shall see thy name. Hear ye the rod, ouch, and who hath appointed it? He says, when you're getting corrected, pay attention. Don't just take your beating and say that hurt. No, pay attention. Why did you get the beating? And who is it that's powerful enough to give you a beating? Okay, pay attention. That's what Israel should have done. And that's what Manasseh did. Once he got over there, they got him in Babylon. They bound him up, put him in wherever they put him. He suddenly started thinking, hey, wait a minute, I was a king too. And I could kill people. I was killing them from one end of the city to the other. And now it's happening to me. Wait a minute. Who's swinging the rod here? That's who I need to submit to. I need to get on his team. In Luke chapter 15. Luke chapter 15, verse 16. Luke 15, verse 16. At some point, you can put your name in this passage. We've all been there in some sort of degree or another. We've all been the prodigal son. And we'll probably all be back in that passage at some point. So it's good to claim this one as your own, because you'll know the answer when you get there. Luke 15, verse 16. And he would fain have filled his belly with the husk that the swine did eat, and no man gave unto him. And when he came to himself, he said, How many hired servants of my father's have bread enough and to spare, and I perish with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and I will say unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee. That's all you got to do. Return to God. Manasseh is a prime example of all we got to do is turn to him. Even regardless of how horribly wicked you become. And he had become very wicked. Other thing we saw there, let's go back to our verse. Where is that? 2 Chronicles 33, verse 12. It says that he besought the Lord. Now that's a good thing. It's not enough just to admit you were wrong. You need to seek the right answer, the Lord. Some people will admit they were wrong, but just being wrong doesn't solve the problem. You need the answer. Okay, the answer is the Lord. That's it. The answer is always more Bible. He is the Word. Look at Psalms chapter 50. Psalms 50, verse 15. This is a good verse to memorize. Psalms 50, verse 15. In fact, I need to add that to my list. Psalms 50, verse 15. This is a great verse. God talking here. And call upon me in the day of trouble. Ever been there? Ever been in the day of trouble? Shiloh's never been. That'll be tomorrow. Right. No, we've all been there. But hey, finish the verse. The day of trouble could be good. I will deliver thee, and thou shalt glorify me. That's a promise from God. Let's grab hold of that one. Stick that in your back pocket. You're going to need it often. In Acts chapter 9, we see Saul, who is Paul. Here, he has the same thing happen. This is a good one to remember, and you can remember it by the address. People should have been crying out to God when 9/11 happened. Here's the verse for 9/11. Acts 9:11. Acts 9:11. And the Lord said unto him, Arise, go into the street which is called Straight, and inquire in the house of Judas for one called Saul of Tarshish, for behold, he prayeth. Okay, he started praying, he sought the Lord, and when he did, God sent help. 9/11 should have been a whole bunch of people praying so God would send some help. We don't need help from NASA and the Pentagon, and I mean, that's all great and grand, but if God doesn't give us help, all that's worthless. That's where the help comes from. You got to seek the Lord. And that's what Manasseh did. Now, Manasseh got restored. That's a great thing. I wish he would have done something with it, though. Manasseh fortifies Jerusalem, destroys the idolatry, restores the worship of God. However, he doesn't go far enough. He leaves the high places. That's probably his favorite spot right there. His secret sin that he enjoys. No, you can't leave any sin. You have to eliminate them all. Now, I'm not saying it's easy, and it may take a long time to do it, but you determine that's your job, is to get rid of all of it. You never get rid of all of it. You're always waking up and saying, hey, how'd that one get here? You get out of here. But you got to have that determination. I'm not going to have any of that mess. And he didn't go far enough. 2 Chronicles chapter 33, verse 14. 2 Chronicles 33:14. Now after this, He built a wall without the city of David on the west side of Gihon, in the valley, even unto the entering in of the fish gate, and compassed about Ophel, and raised it up a very great height, and put captains of war in all the fenced cities of Judah. Now that just makes sense because he's just been in jail. Okay, the first thing you think is, hey, don't want this to happen again. We need some good soldiers. Verse 15. And he took away the strange gods and the idol out of the house of the Lord. Remember the thing that had defiled it. And all the altars that he had built in the mount of the house of the Lord and in Jerusalem, and cast them out of the city. Good. I think he should have burned them, stomped them, and disintegrated them, or eliminated them for sure. Verse 16. And he repaired the altar of the Lord, and sacrificed thereon peace offerings and thank offerings, and commanded Judah to serve the Lord God of Israel. Decreed it. Nevertheless, ouch. You always hate it when there's a nevertheless, or but, or although. And here it is. Nevertheless, the people did sacrifice still in the high places, yet unto the Lord their God only. Really? So they're going to serve God on the altar they were serving Baal on. Really? That didn't work. That's like this. If I say, I'm going to go to a Christian rock concert, the two don't mix. You don't serve God at the Baal table. The two don't match. And that's what he had done, or his people had done. They said, I tell you what, okay, he's commanded we have to serve the Lord. Okay, well, we still like going up to that high place. You know, those Christmas trees are pretty up, the grove up there is real pretty. And and so we're going to go up there and burn incense. We'll just say we're doing it to God. Yeah. And they mixed it. And so what do the Catholics do when they come into a place? When they were taking over the world, they would come into a new place, find out what heathen practices they had, and they would put a new name on it, let them do the same thing, and say you're doing it to the same God we serve. And that's what his people had done. They'd become good Catholics. Okay, the closing remarks on his life. 2 Kings 21, verse 17. Now the rest of the acts of Manasseh, and all that he did, and his sin that he sinned, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah? And Manasseh slept with his fathers, and was buried in the garden of his father, of his own house, in the garden of Uzziah, and Ammon, his son, reigned in his stead. So he got a son to sit on the throne. We're going to see that all the way through this kingdom. Same thing happens in 2 Chronicles 33, verse 18. Only there he gives us something good about his life. Now this guy's got a wicked life. And we've seen so many kings where there's just absolutely nothing good said about them, even though they've done one or two good things. This guy really impressed God by turning in his affliction and humbling himself. So much so that in his closing remarks, God mentions it. 2 Chronicles 33:18. Now the rest of the acts of Manasseh, and his prayer unto his God. God notes that. That was important. And the words of the seers that spake unto him in the name of the Lord God of Israel. Behold, they are written in the book of the Kings of Israel. His prayer also, we're going to talk about it again, his prayer also, and how God was entreated of him, and all his sins and his trespasses, in the place wherein he built high places, and set up groves and the images before he was humbled. Behold, they are written among the sayings of the seers. So Manasseh slept with his fathers, and they buried him in his own house, and Ammon his son reigned in his stead. His life ended on a good note. His dad's started on a good note, ended on a bad note. Manasseh at least turned. He repented and he humbled himself. That's the key to it, is to stay humble. And you're either humble or you're not. You can't prepare for that. You just recognize God for as big and good as he is, and that just naturally puts you in the right spot. All right, the next king shows up is his son, Ammon. And we can go through this one quickly, I think. Let's see what time we've gotten to. He only reigns 2 years, so we don't have much to say about him. Ammon reigns 2 years. 2 Kings 21:19. Ammon was 42 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 2 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was that woman.
Did you say 40?
20 and 2 years old. 20 and 2 years old. Mahus, how do you say that? Meshulama? Meshulatha? The meth head. Meshulameth. Same thing in 2 Chronicles 33:21. No new details. He does evil. You could just about put that behind all of them. He does evil. Well, he's only going to last 2 years, so God was not impressed. In 2 Kings 21, verse 20. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, as his father Manasseh did. Now, what he's saying there, he's not saying that when Manasseh did right, that was evil. He was saying when Manasseh was doing evil, his son decided that's the part I want to do. And that's what he followed. Verse 21. And he walked in all the ways of all the ways that his father walked in, and served the idols that his father served, and worshipped them, and forsook the Lord God of his fathers, and walked not in the way of the Lord. Okay, so he knew about those idols that his dad was fond of. So obviously this guy was around when his dad still had idols. Now his dad got rid of them, but it was enough to open the door of wickedness to his son, and his son followed suit. Let's see it in 2 Chronicles. 2 Chronicles 33:22. But he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, as did Manasseh his father. For Ammon sacrificed unto the carved images. Now we're getting details. He didn't just like them and he didn't just worship them, he sacrificed to them. Now, when we're saying sacrifice, these wicked gods, they required animal sacrifice, but a lot of times they required human sacrifice. So we're going down a dangerous path, which Manasseh his father had made and served them. Now's where it differs between the good thing his dad did and what his life is. And humbled not himself before the Lord, as Manasseh his father had humbled himself. But Ammon trespassed more and more. He went down the road, and then he started jogging down the road, and he started running down it, and then he caught a cab, and he got on an airplane, and he was going to hell as quick as he could get there. That's what he was doing. He's slain by his servants. Now, you've got to come to some conclusion with wickedness. The wages of sin is death. We know that. And so, with his life, it didn't take long. It says he did more and more, so it must have been a whole lot real quick, because he only is king for 2 years. So he was turning the volume as high as he could get it on wickedness. Well, he's going to meet his end. 2 Kings chapter 21, verse 23. And the servants of Ammon conspired against him, and slew the king in his own house. And the people of the land slew all them that conspired against the king Ammon. And the people of the land made Joash his son king in his stead. Josiah, his son king in his stead. Okay, so he's got a coup. His servants, somehow he's made them mad. And I doubt they did it because they were extra righteous. Wickedness just makes you wicked, to even your subordinates. His servants, wickedness makes you have a bad attitude toward everything. The way you approach life is just wicked. I mean, literally. And so probably the way that, one of the things that the Queen of Sheba said to Solomon is that she noticed that his servants were happy. Okay? And that's true. Righteousness exalts a nation. Sin is a reproach to any people. Okay, so that's what's going on here. His servants couldn't stand him and they killed him. Well, the people wouldn't stand for that. You killed a king, we can't have that, so they kill him. It's a vicious cycle. The closing remarks on his life, 2 Kings 21:25. Now the rest of the acts of Ammon, which he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah? And he was buried in his sepulchre in the garden of Uzzah. And Josiah, his son, reigned in his stead. And that's about all we get on him. You can dig and see if you can come up with much more on him, and there's not a whole lot there, because God said he wasn't even worth putting a whole lot of room in my book on him. He was just wicked, and I killed him. All right, there's an old song that says, Jesus, Lord and Savior, I give my life to thee, for thou in thine atonement hast give thy life for me. I owe no other master, my heart shall be thy throne. My life I give henceforth to live, O Christ, for thee alone. That's good. And that, if Manasseh had got a hold of that thing early on in his life, it may have made a difference when it came to Ammon. But Ammon had been used to seeing you can do whatever you want to do and you can get away with it. And it didn't work so well with him. 2 years in and he's done. One of the tragedies of hearing all of these wayward testimonies is it gives people the idea, okay, you can get away with 40 years of wickedness, I can too. God doesn't let everybody get away with wickedness for a long time. This guy only got 2 years and he was done. You gotta snap to it. There are a handful of people that God will give extra grace and he'll let them go on year after year in wickedness. But that's not the majority. Those are few and far between. Don't hear the testimonies of wicked people and think that can be you. It isn't necessarily.